ashes burn in the still of the night. It's our turn.
Because you're sympathetic to their cause? You agree with her tactics?
You know, clearly you have some kind of an agenda here. I don't have time for this.
I don't actually. I don't care much for either side.
So what, that makes you fair and balanced?
What's up, Star Wars Limited fans? It's Loopy here, Late Night Gaming, and we are here for the Boba Green Masterclass. And this deck has been wrecking planetary qualifiers the last couple of weeks. I mean, a couple of the wreckers here. First off, I'm joined by
Hello.
the fellow who put me down in Chicago, TDCJason. Tell us about your run with Boba Green.
Yep, my name is Jason Haker, and I went 10-0 in Chicago with Boba Green, and had a lot of close games, but a lot of W's.
All right. And then Krusher from
Maclunky Gaming here.
Yep, there you go. These guys are not only streaming, but crushing events.
Yeah, we should be streaming the PQ on November 2nd in, I think it's Florida, so tune into that.
That's the delayed one for the Hurricane.
That is the delayed one, yeah. I believe Tim got the rights to that, so should see a stream there that day.
So
Now,
tell us about...
I was going to state my record. I went to the Rochester PQ and the Jersey PQ, and so I went 9-1 both days, and in Swiss I lost to Boba Green. So both times.
Was both times your teammate?
It was both times my teammate.
And then
although we are running slightly different versions of the deck, and certainly in Jersey his deck was better suited for the mirror because he was running No Good Me Dead, for example. And that's how my stream game lost. I just got blown out by that card.
And you ended up winning that PQ, and then the second one you did, you won the games and then conceded to pass the.
That's right.
All right.
We were unsure at the time if the buy was going to pass down, but it does in fact pass down.
Yeah.
But the games were played on stream. So.
I mean, you guys are both just crushing it. Pun intended. I learned about Maclunky Gaming, and really, I appreciate the kind of 3 or 4 channels that are really busting ass to get competitive games out there. Like watching the real thing of top players is very important for my preparation. I do that a lot while playing games to have another screen. Tell us about your Twitch channel.
Yeah, I mean, we're very new and we're learning a lot in this process, but we're a bunch of competitive players. The Twitch channel is twitch.tv/Maclunky Gaming. I mean, it's, it'll be linked. And, at the moment we're just streaming various PQs, but we'd like to expand to some 1Ks that are going around, or 2Ks if we can. And there's also a YouTube channel where we break up the games on stream and put them into individual games that you can watch. Same channel name, that is.
And definitely
we're just dedicated to showing the games.
Yeah,
getting Star Wars Unlimited out there.
I'm a new subscriber. I got a Discord and all sorts of cool stuff. But I mean, somebody in your technical skills because your production looks really good.
Oh yeah, that's the stream team, Tim and Claire. They're really keep the team together. I just show up and look pretty and play games, and that's really my role.
Streams with Bobo.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right. And Jason, this is the first card game you've ever played?
Yeah, no, I come from a Versus system. I played that on the pro circuit for years. Got to travel around the world playing that, and then played Magic in a few pro tours, and then played a bunch of the Elder Scrolls Legend. Had some cool stream matches of that, and then got to work on it. And since then, I've been a game designer, so I've been doing more traditional board games. A Ninja Turtles Kickstarter just ended, and I have a Trick Taker coming out next month. So that's what I'm up to.
Yeah, I'm interested in Trick Taker now too. I've already kickstarted the Ninja Turtle game because I like Managed already, and my wife prefers cooperative as opposed to competitive games. So Yeah, we did that. You can actually watch our VOD is out from Chicago already, where we're pointing at the Turtle Kickstarter.
Yeah, I was a little shameless with the promotion of there.
But yeah, promotion is what like gaming does best. We like to pump all of our guests. Thank you guys for taking the time to share your knowledge of Boba Green enthusiasts out there. I feel like I'm I want people to win when it comes down to it, and I think you are on the best deck in the current meta.
It's a good deck to play to win.
That is true. And if you're playing keeps, there's absolutely no shame in playing best deck. That's what you should do. It's a card game. All right. So let's talk about lists. We did, and this is a re-record of this masterclass, and it was because I screwed up with some sound. But we did have a Neil from Dallas. He can't make it tonight. He was here too. But we decided to keep this slide in because this is kind of like the stock list is what we talked about the first time. So before you talk about your customizations, why don't you guys talk about just Boba Green? Why play this deck at a competitive event?
One of the top line reasons is that it just has some of the best cards. In my opinion, Boba's Armor and Overwhelming Barrage, they're cards that like nothing else really comes close to that power level, and this is the best shell to do that, along with the ramp. And I think another like top level discussion is that like Boba Green is a spectrum all the way from like high tempo, like tap things down, all the way to like grindy, almost complete control and remove everything and win eventually. And it gives you an opportunity to make a bunch of decisions because you get a ton of mana. So typically, on that flip turn, you might be getting double the mana or double the resources that they have access to. So that combined with an incredible stat line on the leader and some of the best like singular cards that are in the game, it's a good combination.
Now, adding on to the cards that really make this deck come together, Boba also has some of the best finishers in the game with Firespray and Maul. Just being able to get damage from your hand on a single turn without passing. Both Firespray and Maul can do that. And just really close out games that way.
Yeah, it's a ton of reach. I mean, if Fet's Firespray is not the best sick drop in Star Wars Unlimited, it's in the top 3. For sure.
Also, the ramp allows you to get to those cards one turn earlier than everybody else. So, let's not discount that.
All right. And Anil did.
The fact that Boba is so well statted means that ramping is less dangerous because he just comes out and takes back the board.
And Anil did a great job.
Especially with the Boba's Armor, as was mentioned.
He did a great job talking about this. I'll stand up for the Reinforcement Walker because I know it's not in a couple of your lists. It is a reasonable card, I think, for matches where either it is the healing stabilizer versus aggro, or kind of alternatively what can draw you some cards against other ones. The other one I want to point out is he does have Devastators in his sideboard. The Baltimore PQ was won by a Boba Green. The Devastators actually really played a big role in a couple of those games, coming in and kind of being the final shutdown. And one of them was a mirror, because Devastator smashes something, but then blocks all fire sprays, right? Because
it effectively wins both arenas.
Right.
Yep.
So
it's a huge difference.
When I find myself playing Boba Green, I often I can find myself stop resourcing around the 8 resources or 9, so that would just delay my Devastators. But I mean, if in control, I could see it or even in the mirror, just blowing out some units with that extra late game.
So
yeah, I think that speaks to the tempo of like whether or not and we're going to talk just generally that you play the deck a lot more like high tempo and try to get the win significantly earlier. Whereas I know I play it a lot more of like closer to hard control on stream. I think there was a game I had 14 resources out against a Han Green. So my games went a little different, but yours, understandably, were also W's.
They both took it. So.
And Han Green can get very grindy. Luke can get very, very grindy. Luke's actually a good matchup that not a lot of people are playing right now, but Luke is a good deck. And then, like, Bosk Blue. I think actually the other one that I remember the Devastator coming down was a Bosk, matchup. But, I mean, obviously Bosk has some removal, but being able to present that big of a threat is an issue. All right.
It is an interesting question with the Reinforcement Walker. In so many of the matchups that the Reinforcement Walker would be good, maybe just go ahead and play one Devastator main. Because I'm not sure that the Reinforcement Walker necessarily helps with like the healing in the mid and the and like the Sabine and those other matchups. To me, it would end up being a resource most of the time. So if you're going to go like an anti-control card, I feel like you should just, go fully in there.
And if you get into those real grindy matchups, you're still having to do something with the resupplies and super laser attacks you draw. So, I mean, you will...
Yeah, and Devastator still grants you card advantage. So does a draw, but one also then tries to swing for 10, so...
Barrage is for 12.
Seems good.
All right, tell us about your list.
That's true.
This is the New York version of your list. So this is, what, PQ2? Krusher?
Yeah, right. It's got the commission and whatnot. That's a good card for Boba Green. Yeah, it's a good card. It's a bit slow in a lot of matchups, which is why I was a bit apprehensive to run it in my Jersey list. But in matchups like Han Yellow, it really shines because maybe they ditch your resupply with a Bodhi or a Spark, and then you just play that smuggled commission on 2. They're not on turn 2, and then you get a card back to your hand. So it's it helps fight that a little bit, but it also searches for a 1 cost, a 2 cost, a 3 cost, a 4 cost, a 5 cost, and a 6 cost in my deck in particular. You've got Greedo, Boba's Armor, Boba Fett unit, 4-Alarm, Zuckuss, and of course Firespray, because Firespray is a transport. No.
Yeah, if I'm trying to beat this with Han Blue, like Han 2 Blue, Red Blue, Hero, or Ray, or Turret. Yeah. We're talking about Turret. I'm bringing Turret to a showdown.
That's right.
Let's go. But that's one of the last cards I want to see in your list. Because one of the ways I can win is pillaging your hand away. Commission is really negative when that's the response.
Yep, I had that exact situation.
I'd love to add more to the deck.
Yep, and also it has a cool sideboard, just a bunch of more sideboard options, like the Bounty Hunter crew for like the super duper grindy stuff. It just does so many things that you want. And even in your list, you're not playing Bosk units. So in mine, additionally, it's just another way of like helping me like zap space with Bosk.
That's very true. I decided I liked Zuckuss instead of Bosk just because I wanted that option for a proactive play. And also Zuckuss eats Fell the Dragon so that maybe they don't have Fell the Dragon for your Firespray later on. And also doesn't die to takedown, so it's... I don't know. I get my ambushes out of the Lackey and 4 Lums.
I mean, it also just speaks to, like, the core of this deck is so strong. When it comes to, like, these cards that are around the periphery, really, you could just choose, like, you could randomly generate some of these. and it would probably be pretty strong. I think that the Zuckuss and 4-Lom is totally reasonable. And occasionally you're gonna live in magical Christmas land and truly get them, and it's gonna feel really good.
It happened to me like 3 times over the course of the 2 PQs. Yeah, I won all the games that happened. So
a lot of times,
and it was fun for me.
Like I've seen good Boba players, like I think Maclunky back one of them, to save it, and then now all of a sudden it's good, right?
Maclunky. Yeah. So good.
And you can search to get the combo pieces together with commission if you really want to, if you're really desperate.
Maybe we should be leaning into more commissions then. Oh, here's 2 commissions.
Yeah.
You said you would play like 7 Barrages if you had the opportunity. I might play 7 Maclunkys.
Yeah, and maybe I could imagine that, and that is one of the questions that is kind of the guiding principle of my deck, is that like I think that instead of winning on those with those 7 cost units, my focus, even though they're in there, my focus is really to win the Boba Armor war first. And I think that the Boba Armor is the most important card in those mirrors. It activates so much stuff. So then my deck is really, how can I make sure to maximize the total number of Boba's armors that I draw? So you're going to see Enticing Reward. You're going to see Commission that also helps me get it. And then I'm going to be looking for, in those matchups against other other green Boba to be able to, Bazine away, their Bazines that stop me, or sometimes I'll be looking for my second armor, assuming that the first one is going to get removed with a confiscate or with the space unit. But yeah, it's really just, make sure that you win on that turn, and then everything else is downstream from that. And I mean, it also is why, you can see one of the differences in our lists being the no good to me deads and waylays that are really typical. But because I'm running Enticing Reward to try to get more barrages and the armors, I need to actually actively remove and defeat opposing units. So my number of cloud racers is increased. My tempo tools are down, but my actual destroy, defeat other units is up. That's why it's so leaned into Bosk, so leaned into Cloud Rider and such.
And I actually didn't notice.
Although I feel that no good to me dead is necessary in the mirror to handle armor, unless you're running confiscates in the side. I mean, I just had one of the games I lost in Swiss was we both had ramp, we both had Boba deploy and put on armor, and then Philip had no good to me dead and I didn't, and I lost the game. I wasn't running no good to me dead in Jersey there, so it was a deck building decision that lost me that game, but
yep. And
that's why I bought it to Jersey or to Rochester.
I think if I had to do it again, I would probably have 1 or 2 copies, especially because you can search them with the Enticing Reward during those early turns. And I do have the confiscates to help that fight as well.
As I became
it's also good with Bosk
in game 2 of our match. I think confident won you the game.
Yep, I did get no good to me dead, I think, twice against Boba Green, and I think I won both of those because I was able to just grind it out with an overwhelming barrage because I won the armor war both times. Mm-hmm. But what you're saying is so totally reasonable and reflects my experience in testing as well. No good to me dead is very good. Yeah.
All right, so Boba leader, he's had push stats from the beginning. I mean, there's some leaders that are getting close to competitive, but I think he still has the best pure stats for a 5-drop. But his resource ability is very good. Right? Are you using it on most turns?
Yeah. I mean, if you can use it, use it. I mean, there are situations where you can't afford to go out of your way to get those resources because maybe you're in a race and you just need to attack before they exhaust you. But especially on the deploy turn, you really want to get that extra 2 resources, and preferably the one before his deploy as well. So you're getting effectively 8 resources on your opponent's 4 resource turn. So double the amount of turns. And kind of. But
yeah, I mean, and the dream scenarios are such that you play a Greedo on the, and then they play a Green Squadron A-wing, and then you Maclunky and destroy and ready and replay your Greedo, and you've already have a third more resources than they have, and then you start ramping, and then all of your lines, what you're resourcing, you're planning as to potentially having 8 resources on that flip turn when they have 4. You're looking to just fill it up, and in my opinion, if you just can fill those resources up, the chance that you'll be ahead is so significantly great that it's well worth it. It is that quantity is a quality all its own. Eventually, you just have so many things out, and with the addition of Bazines and commissions, you can kind of make sure that you don't quite run out of those items. And from a deck building standpoint, reward. Yeah, yep, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons also that I played so many 1 costs. And I think that in general, we're finding 1 costs to be, very good in Boba right now, because you just have, resources hanging out at the ready, and use them.
Yeah, with the Boba leader, you really learn how many ways you can add to 8, right? You often want to do maybe a 5+3, where you ambush your Bosk or lackey and then try to play a 3-drop, or you flip Boba, put on armor, kill something, and play 5-drop, so 2+5. Well, it's not quite 8, but
and actually, I've started to learn that you can maybe tell on their flip turn whether they have barrage, depending on what they're doing, because if they
that's true, it's very forecasting.
If they don't care about getting the first one, then they're probably going to 7, and the worst case scenario is armor plus barrage. And just because you see
Now,
it's coming doesn't mean you can stop it.
Now, I want to justify my pick of 4-lom a little bit since we're on this. Well, on the 5 resource turn, if you 4-lom and kill something, then you can deploy your Boba still after you untap and put armor on before you attack. And then maybe you can get like a Cloud Rider in there or a Bazine. So do 4+2/+2. So it just adds that flexibility to the deck to have that extra 4 cost in. It also helps if you miss ramp, but a pro tip is never miss ramp. So
Yeah, something you'll notice as people get more and more familiar and like try to have plans to immediately win the armor war by killing Boba as soon as Boba deploys. You want to be in those situations where you can spend all of your resources initially on like a boss and defeat something and ready 1 resource, and then like represent that you have that Maclunky, because then like the boss and the Maclunky will do the same thing that overwhelming barrage will do on the Boba, and then you haven't actually had to like commit your Boba, so that if they have a bunch of resources up and they're waiting to respond to your Boba and they pass, you just claim and you can do it the next turn, and that's fine. The biggest thing is being able to spend you want to spend mana and more mana than them. So however you can make that happen, you're good with it.
All right. Firespray. You mentioned this as
good card.
Now, do you ever resource it?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, especially if it's early.
And I mean, I'm also running a few commissions too, so I have an expectation that I can get it when I need it. And that's not always true, but that's that's the hope that I put into it. I feel the same way about the 7 costs. So, early against so many of the decks, it really just pays to just row all of your expensive stuff. And
I have found myself saving a ball here or there, but that's because I'm running fewer 5-7 drops. But it also depends on the matchup.
Oh,
sorry
for sure.
to interrupt.
No, you're right. Yeah, the Firespray, it just kind of does everything.
Yeah,
I even had the exhaust ability be super relevant several times. I think I had a situation in my top 4 on stream where I just reached over and tapped an opposing unit, and you could tell my opponent was like, how did that even happen? I was like, well, way over here in space, something generated that ability. Yeah, it was pretty great.
I remember seeing that. Yes, and it is on top of that underworld, so it can eat.
That's right.
You can eat mall kickbacks, and then it
can also be bounced back to your hand with Maclunky. Play it again.
See, simpatico. We're getting better at this every time we do it. Because and that's a super relevant thing against Bosk, I think.
Oh yeah, get rid of the bounties too. Maclunky against Bosk.
Yeah, and also everyone that's watching this should know that you can Maclunky whether there's any target or not. So you can always just return I know that we're not talking about Maclunky right now, but you can always just play Maclunky if your unit has a bounty on it to just strip the bounty. Typically it's, go ahead.
And you don't have to hit your own unit. I believe Maclunky says enemy unit. I'm not looking at the card right now, but I don't think that it's like a Vader ping, you have to hit your own thing. Because if there's a legal target, you have to kill your own unit. But I believe that Maclunky says enemy unit, so you do not have to hurt your own thing if you only.
I think it is any unit. But yeah.
Well, then you would have to do that. Though, so keep that. Let me look at the card.
Yeah, but often the times that it matters the most are those early turns where you're dipping and dodging, and maybe you're like, should I play my Greedo out or not for fear of Deathmark or Bounty Hunter Quarry? Right. And if you have a Maclunky, then those type of plays are a lot more reasonable.
Yep. No, and it is any unit, so you did have to assign the 3 damage if you can legally. But this could block it, or at least most of it.
The number of times I've damaged my own Boba Fett's armored Boba with, I believe I've done it with Maclunky, and I've also done it a ton with Salacious Crumb.
Yeah, if you're thinking about Bosk, then Crumb is a better 1-drop because he bounces the bounties himself, and he's good at stalling. If you need to wait for your actions for whatever reason.
So. Boba's Armor, I don't think it's the best moment of the game designers of this game, but the card's incredible, right?
And I had a moment, I think there was it a moment in our game where it was just evident that even if you would have been able to timely reinforcements Wrecker, that like Wrecker and Wrecker's ability and like the ambush and everything still would not have defeated my Boba because of the ammo.
Boba. It was a damaged Boba that still had 3, and no, a timely record does not do it, just because of how Boba armor work.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard other folks say that like the way to do it is you get an armor on the Boba, and then you destroy literally anything, and you overwhelming barrage, and you win the board. And that's like the primary like tent pole of this entire strategy is that is always a threat.
And it's difficult to stop. It wouldn't surprise me if something happens to this card. I think Boba will still be okay, but yeah, and. You'd agree Green uses this better than anybody?
Yeah, I mean,
definitely Boba Green.
Yeah,
I feel
good.
I don't know. I just Boba Green wants to get its big Boba out and sustain, and I mean, I feel like Boba Yellow. I mean, that's the other real flavor of Boba that might run this card. I don't know. You've got all the pumps with cunnings and whatnot, so it doesn't feel as necessary to hit Boba into the face of your opponent so many times. Or also, Boba's Fed Armor combos with Barrage more, which the other flavors of Boba don't have access to. So
yeah, Barrage is huge.
I just think it's more well supported,
and it's exponentially more powerful because you ramped. Because of the nature of threshold costs on leaders, that when it comes out earlier and it's a dominating force when you don't ramp, and when you do ramp, there's so many times when like you will have ramped and you have your armor on a Boba, and you like look at their number of resources and you realize that they are 2 turns away from having a chance to deal with this in any way. Because
Rival's Fall is 6. It's very slow. Then you just play Firespray.
That's why I have 15 confiscates out in the various decks I have, because I mean it's not only that you have to deal with an upgrade, it's you have to deal with an upgrade before you have a lot of resources. I mean there's better.
Yeah, you have to give up that turn. Right. Yeah. If you haven't ramped and you're playing a confiscate to stop it, then often like you're having to play down and you may not have the perfect resources. So even then the hate might not be enough. And I know a lot of my plans in several of my games was not just trying to find the first armor, was to try to find the second armor, so that if the first action was a confiscate, then I could just play the second one down. I'm not rowing my second armor until after the first one's on.
Right. And then survives a little bit. All right, so ramp. I mean, we have resupply and super laser tech. These are very commonly played cards. I mean, you're looking for these.
I prefer resupply in most situations.
Yeah, there's a bunch of space-based decks that like go low to the ground early that try to abandon super laser tech, and there's so many other ways that folks can try to waylay or to slow that down, and you don't truly get the Boba 1 turn earlier, whereas resupply is a lot more reliable. However, it gets hit by Bodhi in like the double yellow matches. So there are some situations where you get got, but overall, the fact that your opponent can't like target one of these specifically makes it very difficult to deal with.
Though often you'll keep both. Also, right?
Mm-hmm. That's true, because you want to protect your hand if they have options of discarding cards, like especially against Spark or Bodhi.
And Bazine, especially in the mirror.
Oh, yeah, especially Bazine, yeah.
Yeah, you need to watch and be careful what you row, because you might need 2 of something.
And speaking of tech, super laser tech not being as good, sometimes it is quite good, because on your 4 resource turn, you have the super laser tech out, and you just that hotshot blaster in your row helps you kill a unit that turn and then you've already spent 3 resources. You're going to untap 1. Attack with Boba, and you're going to get your 3+5. Just remember having that in mind. Have that in mind. There's a lot of 4 health units you can finish off. K2SO, some stupid 3-drop that isn't a 3/5.
Yeah, I'm not playing that, but I wish I had it in a bunch of situations, because that type of attack reach is super attractive. However, you can also get some shenanigans with Crumb, since Crumb can destroy your own super laser tech. That's a way to do it if they've totally taken over space. Is that you can make plans for that.
I think it's a good reason to kill Crumb.
There are even times where I've seen against full space where I've played the Crumb on the three resource turn, so that I can play the tech on the 4 resource turn and immediately kill it to get Boba to help with the race. Because if you play them in the other order, it won't work.
Right. All right. So flip turn targets. I mean, I think we listed these: Barrage, Bosk, Zuckuss, lackeys, and Forlom. These can be the payoff of the flip turn.
This is where
I think on the flip turn you usually
go ahead.
Yeah, you usually want to play something with ambush to try and kill something, but so that's Bosk, Lackey, and Forlom. And with Lackey, it's sort of a meta pick just because of how many 5 health X5s there are out there with Tech, DJ, Boba Unit, Toro, Cassian, Sabine. You could even say Bodhi. I mean, he's not 3-5, but he's still Lackey still value kills. But there's just a lot of tech needs to be answered immediately, more or less. So
yeah,
if you've a good card.
If you've ramped, it means you've given up board position. So you really need to ambush on that following turn to make up for the damage that you just did to yourself, and then you can truly pay off with the fact that you have the early leader. And all of these choices are good, and it's kind of in that whole idea of just shovel in decent cards when you have more resources than your opponent. All of these are pretty attractive, and they're all good in different situations. I know I was playing the lackeys in the sideboard for the same reason. There's a bunch of 5 health things that you want to hit. Playing it main, I had many games where just having more active 5-drops would have been probably more powerful than having 7-drops, because it's just so important winning those turns and making sure that things don't go awry, especially against the Sabines of the world and the other aggressive decks.
All right, and Barrage is kind of good in everything, right? Is there some...
Barrage is... Yeah. This is the question that I asked that made me want to play Enticing Reward is, if you could, how many Overwhelming Barrages would you play in your deck? And how many Boba's Armors would you play in your deck? And my opinion is, I think that I would play 7 Overwhelming Barrages, maybe 6 armors, 8 armors, something. I would play a lot of those cards, so that's why I just wanted more of them. Overwhelming Barrage is wild. It pushes an advantage. It's one of the few cards that brings you back out of a hole. I had a situation where I think it was in my round of 8 match where I destroyed 4 space units on my comeback turn, and it's so brutal.
Yeah, that was against... Did you play Sabine Yellow, Ryan?
Yes. Yeah.
You probably got to draw a card because one of them was a turncoat, I imagine.
It's true.
All right. So, what matchups are we looking for Bosk?
I like Bosk generally because I have less space presence, and I need Bosk. I need Bosk to handle space. One of the combos that you just generally need to know is that when you Maclunky with a Bosk out, you'll do the 3, and even if you pick up Bosk as the underrolled unit, he will see the trigger still, so that 2 damage will still go out there. So there's tons of situations against shielded units. I had a moment where I had an opponent discard my Overwhelming Barrage, but then I had an Enticing Reward hit right after that, and that got me a Maclunky and a commission, and I destroyed more things on the board because of Bosk than the Overwhelming Barrage would have done, because of how good those small actions are with Bosk. I'm a firm believer. It creates so many awkward situations when you play it and immediately remove something on your catch-up turn, where your opponent has to make an immediate decision of whether they want to then forego even more tempo by sending their other unit just directly into Bosk just to kill it, just to make sure it's not on the board, because Bosk left unchecked just does wild stuff.
Yeah, it's salt in the wound when you confiscate a Darksaber and then you also get 2 damage assigned because Bosk was out when he did it.
Yeah, that's brutal.
All right, what matchups are you looking for? Zuckuss, Krusher.
Zuckuss, well, I usually take Zuckuss out against Sabine in many aggro decks. So in that sense, control or maybe mid-range, the mirror. In control, I mentioned it earlier that sometimes you just need that proactive play with a big body on board because there's nothing to ambush. And a 6/6 doesn't die to takedown. Takedown's a bad card. I mean, it's a necessary card, but very expensive to play takedown. And also, Fell the Dragon wants to be used on things like Maul or Firespray, and if my opponent has to be spending Fell the Dragon to take out a Zuckuss, then they're losing that attrition war and might not have it for my Firespray or my Maul that is coming in the turn or two. So, yeah.
It feels really good whenever you Overwhelming Barrage Boba with armor on it, and Zuckuss gets to start at that 6th attack stat line. So, there are often a lot of situations where you're very tempted to Overwhelming Barrage when you first hit your 5th resource, but it's backbreaking if you wait just a little bit as they overcommit to the board. So I can imagine there'd be some situations where Zuckuss would allow for that.
I prefer developing stats with these units on my Boba flip turn, which is why I run 6 units in that category, like Zuckuss, Forlom, and Lackey, just because I want to put the stats out and then Barrage, because the stats on board this turn will then attack face the following turn, and I'll start closing the game out.
It kind of feels bad when you barrage off like a Bazine. Sometimes it's the right thing to do, but
yes, sometimes you have to. Any port in a storm.
Right. It's an underwhelming barrage. All right.
Just whelming.
Just whelming. It's exactly whelming if it's off of a 2 attack. All right. Vader. It's both of your lists. I think that you have 1 in your sideboard, Krusher, if I recall, right?
That's right. That's right. It's because I'm more aggressive with my deck, so I prefer Maul. But you want to hit your 7-on-7, and Vader is also one of the best 7s in the game. So you just naturally want to include it.
It's
getting
wild.
that. Yeah.
It's wild when Vader now has the text of look at their hand and make them discard a card and heal for 1. The fact that he can hit Salacious Crumb and Bazine or give you some space presence. And he doubles as their control blue decks still exist in the meta. So being able to spread the bodies out to stop Power of the Dark Side or Avenger from just being totally crippling makes his inclusion totally worth it. And there's a bunch of other situations beyond that that opposing Bosk, Vader is terrific against the Bosk unit. There's a bunch of tech and so many and
DJ.
Yeah.
Sometimes they will DJ and not be able to protect it. I mean, even with Han 1, if you kill the DJ before he gets to blow up your resource, you get it right back. That's nice.
He's annoying to deal with, and especially when your opponent is trying to control you. That there are many times where you just shouldn't ambush at all and just let them have to try to go through 7 health as you've added a ton of stuff to the board.
No, and Vader is certainly, and particularly with being able to 2-1. I mean, where both of you have Bazine at 2, which is probably what you're looking for a lot of the times, and then you also have either Crumb or Kinton, right? Depending on whether it's Krusher or Awesome. But I mean, that's very, very good.
Well, I found.
Go ahead.
In a few situations, I have found that I picked the Bazine. I looked at my opponent's hand, and the knowledge was nice, but I'd rather just have the stats on board to close the game out. I mean, it really depends on the matchup. It's okay, you're playing Vader on 7, so maybe their Super Laser Blast is coming soon, so you want the Bazine to make sure that's not there, or their Snoke, or maybe you're getting rid of Wrecker, or I don't know.
Yeah, Wrecker and the opposing Maul are some of the biggest targets for that,
Yeah, just you have to identify what you're afraid of, or if you just think you should be closing the game out. That's one of the powers of this deck is you can switch very fluently between being the control player and being the aggro player, because you have tools like Overwhelming Barrage to be that control player, but then you have finishers like Maul and Firespray and just Darth Vader to add stats to the board to just keep up the pressure and close games out.
And go ahead.
That's so spot on. Just generally is that there's an old Magic the Gathering article that's called "Who's the Beatdown" by Mike Flores, and it is exactly that concept. Is the player that's more well equipped in the matchup is the one that first identifies which role they should play, whether they're the beatdown or the control. And sometimes that flips in the middle of matches. It will be like context dependent. It'll be hand dependent. So you just have to constantly be evaluating that. And this deck, in the way that it's a mid-range deck, gives you a ton of opportunities for skill expression in that way.
Yep. And good players know when to turn the corner. I mean, you've seen matches. I've seen your matches. I mean, I can think of one you did where you did an excellent job of recognizing that, hey, I can actually start ignoring their stuff, Krusher, and, go for base. And it's something that people miss, too. I mean, I've also watched people playing Kira or piloting Kira, like miss lethals, because they're still stuck in control mode.
Yeah, I've heard that referred to as value town, and I believe it. Yeah. When you get just your brain stuck in the just remove everything.
Right. So
sometimes a Greedo Maclunky is enough to turn the corner against an ECL Sabine, because you tag base next turn, you're already 8 damage ahead. And they don't attack you turn 1, so then you're just ramping and you're playing your Boba, and Greedo's probably hitting base again, and now you're 11 damage ahead. And
they're trying to, and they're helping you. They're using Sabine to help you out. And
exactly.
And whenever they choose not to use Sabine, it's like Greedo healed you for 1. Yeah, it's great.
You flip your Boba, Barrage, equip armor, Barrage, hit for 6, or I guess you wouldn't hit for 8, but you ambush something out. I don't know, it just stacks up. Firespray. It's the same old story.
And at the same time, I think that Sabine isn't necessarily the strong beatdown in that matchup that some people play. I mean, you got to remove this little Boba units, or you'll just see them again and again. So,
yeah, and you've seen that with Sideboard playing on some of the Sabine decks that go way deep to the point of like almost Crate Dragon-esque levels of value, because also assuming that the Boba Green is removing. We'll talk more about those matchups later, but yeah, assuming that you're taking out the top end to fight the quickness, and sometimes you can do the reverse as the Sabine player.
Yep. All right. So, speaking of the, early part of the game that opponents have to manage and you have to manage, here we have Maclunky. Certainly one of the more relevant cards that went into this deck set too. Maybe not the strength level of Boba Armor. Nobody's calling for this to be banned. But what are you looking at Maclunky early in the games?
I want any unit that dies.
Yeah, that's
space.
Yeah.
I do get a little annoyed when I play my Greedo and then they drop their Crafty Smuggler or something like that, or their 4 health unit, but and then my Greedo just gets lucky and it's fine. So
I'm more susceptible to the experience on like the Rebel 3 cost. Was it X-Wing? What's it called? So I need to Maclunky on that first turn if I can. I need to get rid of the Green Squadron A-Wing, because otherwise just a few experience, and it's very difficult for my deck that's not running Waylay to actually wing leader. Yeah,
absolutely against your list, Jason. What I was looking for was A-Wing wing leader. I mean, that's the start that really I think is a problem for you.
Agreed.
I mean, one of the things that ECL Boba had over 30 health Boba was the opportunity to ambush out your 7th Fleet Defender to answer that early space. And now you don't have access to that play, so Maclunky becomes even more important to handle that early space unit. It was backbreaking for Sabine to just... Yeah, you have Barrage too. I mean, that's of course. Most of your answers to space are in the form of events, which... Bosk he's not an event, but he also helps take care of space with the presence of events.
Yep. And all of these are good
Speaking of
being replayed, so all of these you'll happily Maclunky. And yeah, I've Maclunkied all of those throughout the day many times. Yep.
And you're playing Bazine, like more than 3 times some games. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've had to
play the Bazine, Maclunky, resource it, smuggler out again, then just then you're not losing a card.
Yep, and I had some games where Crumb must have healed 8 for me or so, like between Maclunkies on like for multiple turns, enticing rewards for more Maclunkies to keep playing them using the ability. Like, yeah, it's a lot of redundancy.
You speak of the healing of Crumb, which is true and very helpful, but damage prevention is also equivalent to healing in my mind. So that's the reason why I chose the Intimidator, because it's still a Maclunky target, but maybe they play that Smuggler to try and get around the Maclunky play. But now if you have initiative, you can just attack the Smuggler, get the shield, and then it's exhausted, so you're preventing that damage. Or you leave the Intimidator out. I mean, maybe it survives that attack and the Sabine comes down, and then you can exhaust their Sabine or their Han or their other Boba.
Yeah. Give it a gun or anything
that saves a lot of health.
Like 1/4s or 4 health units on turn 1, are good against Maclunky.
Yeah, I like the Intimidator. I think that the probably the ability to kill your own super laser tech may push that over the edge, but I think that your decision to run the Intimidator is very reasonable. There is a ton of situations where just tapping down the flip turn leader is just a significant advantage. And often you've already done a few things with the Intimidator and it's left at a 1/2 or a 1/1, and you just get to just almost for free get that going. That's some great stuff.
All right, Bazine. One of the more annoying cards that everybody has to deal with, here. Are you casting this on initiative, if you can, against everything? Or are there matchups where you favor it?
Yeah,
I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, yes, I am playing on initiative in most matchups, unless I have Greedo Maclunky. But against with Bazine in most matchups, you have an idea of what you want to take. In the mirror, you're looking for ramp. And Sabine, maybe you're trying to rip their turn 1 play, or a wing leader or fleet lieutenant, or a Poe. Right? You have the option of disrupting a play that's going to affect you this turn, or disrupting a play that's occurring later with Bazine. Oh, and you also have the option to not discard so that they don't have new options in their hand for this very turn.
Yeah, it can be really tempting to play the smuggle game and the value game here, but so much is defined by you just playing this proactively and then kind of dictating what the game you're playing is. So I talked a little bit about the wars of the armor, and Bazine's perfect for that. Stripping their armor, removing their Bazine so that their Bazine doesn't take your armor. It's great for that. And also, to what Krusher saying is that you really have a few different decision trees of how much can I really wreck their current plan right now this turn. Is there a chance that they just might hang 3 resources or 2 resources and not be able to play anything? You should consider that. I had a top 8 match where I removed their 2-drop. They had resourced, so they didn't keep redundant 2-drops, and they got Bazined, and they didn't draw a 2-drop off of the Bazine, so they had no play. And that's just it's brutal. It's so hard to come back from that, because at the same time you're also looking for macro concerns, when against Loopy, I just wanted to remove those wreckers. In general, in Sabine, my number 1 target and the thing I'm trying to stop is Poe. I don't really want to have the fight on ECL Poe removing the armor. So I would much rather try to Bazine to get that gone, even to the point of playing the Bazine as my first action on my flip turn. But yeah, Bazine does a lot of things, and to your point, knowing if those things aren't in the hand, just let it be.
Yep. And I think that's something that I've certainly seen people that have Bazined me and taken something where I thought it was unwise. Just because I am.
Oh, we forgot.
Go ahead.
Almost the most important rule of Bazine: when you attack with her, you have to say Bazinga.
Bazinga! That is true. I mean, she's hitting for 1. I mean, most of the times that's there, but yeah, no, you gotta get a little fun. I have a lot of fun when I play.
Gets rid of that shield.
Yeah, I think I actually made Jason do it in our final, and he was digging it.
I was ready to do it anyway. It was the tip of the tongue. Yeah. But also one of the things for me, because I'm running so few space units or ways to deal with space, Bazine is also a legitimate space fighter for me. In that a lot of times the Phantom Tie is destroyed by Bazine, because otherwise it is going to be a while before I deal with it.
Oh yeah, I played against a Han Yellow, and I used Bazine to rip 2 Falcons, just so they don't enter play ready and just start hitting me, because that's the only reach out of hand that, well, without a board, the reach that Han Yellow has is playing Falcon and attacking for 3 or 6 with surprise strikes. So answering that threat is pretty big in that matchup. It's just another space unit going.
And one more thing, she changes the matchup. So we're a mid-range deck, and we're talking about how we're fighting against all of the aggressive stuff. The presence of Bazine changes so many of like the hard control matchups where like their super laser blasts are not for sure going to happen. Their Avengers are not necessarily going to happen. You're saving your Maclunky's foot to pick Bazine back up to get even more, so that you could just chew up the top end. She's pesky. Like she's good. She's good against all of the archetypes.
All right. Commission, I think we talked about at length. Great card.
Yeah.
Walker. Hey. We did have a slide for it, so I think I stood up for this. All right, Enticing Reward. So this one is Jason's, baby. Played well
card's
throughout
broken.
the tournament. It is, bro. It's pay 1 and draw 2 of your choice.
Yeah, and I listened to some of the commentary, and like there's a little bit of a not a misunderstanding, but whenever this thing triggers, you go and get 2 non-units. And you discard a card from your hand, because so many of the ways it was described as like, it's on a non-unique, so they only get 1 card. It's like net, but your card quality increases significantly. The number of times I had a Enticing Reward trigger and just got 2 overwhelming barrages, and my opponent just like slunk down in their chair, like this thing can win games. You have to be real intentional about like what you put it on and when you know you can trigger it. You know, you definitely want to watch out ever putting it on underworld units for fear that they could Maclunky. But there's a bunch of situations where you know that there's already going to be a ground fight, and you're able to just sink that 1 resource in to get the reward on, or you can like so often put it on opposing leaders. So like in the control Bosk match, you just like hang these off of their Bosk leader for the Bosk blue, just like a Christmas tree. You just put them all on there, and eventually you're going to just draw a bunch of busted cards.
So your takeaway is Bosk blue, make him enticing. Got it.
He is very, because they tend to not run units against you for fear of that, if they know that it's coming, and they're so close to heart control anyway that other than Pershing and some and Chilton and some other stuff, they might not have stuff for it. So you know that the leader is going to be able to take it. And generally, the premise here is I just want to have more armors and barrages, and all of like the second level things that you could get from this are still terrific. Getting a commission that then you turn cheaply into a Fet's Firespray for the next turn. All of a sudden, your Enticing Reward like pseudo drew you Fet's Firespray, and like it's really flexible. And one of the things that it also does is it just like adds general consistency to your deck. As long as you're getting it to trigger, you're just going to have a lot of opportunities for decisions. So it's going to slow your game down a little bit, but also just give you a ton of little decision points as you look through the lines of how to spend your resources over the next 2 or 3 turns.
Oh, very good. And you can play it on Pershing, play it on Super Laser Tech. I've certainly seen that.
So many on Super
Also,
Laser Tech.
It's just so fun to search cards from your deck.
It is.
Search those cards, you find the 2, shuffle again.
Oh yeah, so many times you're like, I'm going to set my hand aside, and because I'm going to do some other fun activities here with these 10 cards.
All right, so on that point, I guess Masterclass 401. I mean, at some point, if you're running all of the Vaders and all of the Enticing Rewards, I mean, start paying attention to where the 10s are or what's in the 10s. And I say that I did Triple Dark. I like Triple Dark Raid, and I often will have Enticing Reward to fuel the Triple Dark. But if you're running Vader and that, you can actually know exactly what you're going to get on the Triple Dark, which gets rid of the problem. So, then if you're a trick-taking game player, you might actually know how to count those kind of cards like that.
In my final match of Swiss, my first commission had 2 overwhelming barrages in it, or had all 3 of my overwhelming barrages in it. So I knew that like they weren't anywhere close, and eventually like I commissioned again, and then like Enticing Reward, and it still weren't there, and then the next Enticing Reward found them. So like you can get through 10 cards several times if your deck has a bunch of these type of callouts. So yeah, you can make super long-term plans. I think that first overwhelming barrage was on like turn 12, but it was busted when it happened.
All right. Let's jam into the matchups. Some people were going to get this video out for the last part TQs. And Boba Green didn't go anywhere, folks. So I mean, it'll be back set 3, and it's got some toys that are even more sick. Some of the reveals here. But what's your game plan to Sabine?
Prevent as much damage as you can, and that means you need answers to space, because Sabine, I believe, is looking to play that space to get around your lack of space. You want to have a game plan to handle the Sabine unit, preferably before Darksaber or she attacks. So with that, no good or lackey as an answer, or even just the Hotshot Blaster on a Greedo, for example, would handle a Sabine unit. You still want to ramp into Sabine. You want to have that turn 1 play, preferably with Maclunky, ramp so that you can get your Boba out the same turn Sabine is deploying. And then against Sabine, I'll take out my Vaders, but I still think Maul is great in that matchup, because sometimes you just need that extra damage to close games out, and answers the Wrecker. I mean, the key plays Sabine has against you are Wrecker and Poe to really end games. So you have to think about those, as was mentioned earlier. Bazine helps answer that as well, and answer space. So, and of course Barrage. You want to have Barrage. It feels like the Boba deck is almost catered towards Sabine. Like everything in the deck does something good against Sabine, except maybe Commission. It's a bit too slow. But
yeah, I'm personally just looking to maximize early turn mana resources as much as possible. I will be rowing all of the expensive stuff, and I'll be playing the cheapest stuff I can. I run into a tough situation fairly often where, like, even though ramp is important, I still feel like the first turn play is much more important. So I will definitely be mulliganing the hands that don't have much activity on the first turn, even though they have ramp in them, and hoping to have both of those things. Sometimes I feel like, you know, a bunch of things need to go right, so I'll give myself the opportunity to do that with a mulligan, and then I end up siding out all of my 7s, but I'm bringing in other things that are just like slightly cheaper anyway. I'm also bringing in confiscates and some other stuff, and some lackeys, and then my top end ends up being just a patchwork of like try to find something expensive-ish to win with, but just to answer as many threats immediately as possible to keep your health as high as possible. Because, you know, I had a few times when your opponent has to start like for a causing when you're like 16 or so on your base, then you know that it's just kind of over.
yeah, I'm always happy to see an early for a cause. I mean, yeah, they're getting more consistent, but now I can develop the board and not have to worry about killing something. It just feels so freeing.
And sometimes they're doing that to set up a potential like reinforcements into a wrecker or something. But it's a desperation play, and that's the situation you're trying to put them in.
Sometimes they're doing that because you've seen them twice already. I mean, that's why they're doing that, because that'll happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's what they have. So
I mean, if you have something for 3, and I mean, 4 cause does fix your deck going forward, so you'll at least have something to do the next turn. All right. What about the space decks? Start with Boba Yellow. Your cousin.
I think it's similar in that you just kind of white knuckle and pay a lot more attention to being able to get the 7th the shielded 3-cost unit, and in general you just have to be more sensitive to space, and often you can expect to kind of own the ground with you're hoping that you can own the ground with just the Boba's armor. And that'll be enough, so that eventually you'll be able to overwhelming barrage and win. Or you're hoping to, like, for my case, stick a Bosk in and have enough time left to use Bosk to like take over space from there, remove the shields and fight back. And for those that are running mercenary gunship, I feel like that's something that you can really take advantage of because we typically have way more resources than most other players. So that's something that you should be looking for opportunities to bribe that pilot.
And if you're playing against a deck that plays cunning or can put experience on space units, having that waylay or the no good to me dead is also important in those matchups. Just to make sure they don't get that extra 4 damage from cunning, or they play the wing leader or the tie advanced on the phantom just to take out that tempo. And just
if you're running waylays, it means taking a wing leader, probably. On that note, what about Han Yellow? How's that different?
Han Yellow's tough because you got to think about the hand attack that Han Yellow can do. And you also have to make sure you can answer the tech so they don't DJ you or just start getting a hand of 10 cards now or however many resources they have. It's just terrifying when that tech comes down and you have no idea what could start hitting you.
Your primary advantage against double yellow is the fact that you have ramp and they don't. So your flip turn, you're typically much more powerful. So then, you just have to prep for making sure that it happens, keeping redundant ramp if you can. Sometimes you just get lucky and hope that they have the Bodhi and you have the super laser tech and not the resupply. But because unlike Han Green that we'll talk about next, that it can be more explosive, they have to play a little bit more fair.
All right, Han Green. This is one that's top 8 Han Green. I think it's kind of an underrepresented deck. How are you attacking him?
Well, you want to prevent a 5 to 7 if possible. Usually that's the Han the thing to do against Han. And of course you can do that with a Boba's Armor attacking in and killing Han or no good to me dead on Han. It's just, you don't have ambush to answer the Han leader, but cheeky hotshot blaster might take care of it. And then it's, for me, I don't want to go too late against Han because then the home ones come down and start healing and then you don't have many answers at that point. There's no real answer in the deck to home one except a juicy barrage or a stall with a waylay.
Yeah, they lack the push that the others have, so you have some breathing room. So you get to play a little bit more tricksy in those early turns as you're trying to ramp. Some of the things that you're scared of, like you say, are just tech and DJ combos. Both of those units should have big targets on their head. You want to ramp more. They can have that high variable start where they get to the early resupply and maybe things come out before you can deal with it. Those I expect are the most scary situations, and then maybe in some of those situations you can use Bazine to strip some of their payoffs to help yourself there. So try to look, push where there's mush, try to find where they're weakest and attack that axis.
Yeah, if you can't stop the 5 to 7, then just play Bazine to get rid of their 7 drop. Great.
What about,
you see it coming from a mile away.
What about midrange hero blue red? This could be Ray, this could be Han. This could be my boy Churret.
I think you have to watch for pillage. Them attacking your hand is one of the best ways for them to fight you, in my limited experience. And to be smart when you're destroying young Han, paying attention to the potential lines where Crate Dragon could exist to make sure that you're Bazining one more time before it's Crate o'clock.
Get rid of those force enablers.
100%.
Don't want to get forced through.
I think that's right. And I think that Boba Green, equal skill level is going to be significantly favored, but there is a path there. If you're not careful, because Han can be explosive. Both Luke and Redemption are very good against Boba Green.
I think Boba's Armor is just the star in those matchups. If you're ramping, they're not. You're getting Boba's Armor 2 turns out before they can Rivals Fall you, and then Rivals Fall. It just even feels bad for them to Rivals Fall because they've already taken 12 damage, maybe 18 from Boba, and then you're still playing 6 or 7 drops at that point, and just they're spending their whole turn to answer this one thing. That's already gotten value behind you.
All right. What about Kira? Green blue. Also could target. Also could be Pelp. I mean, we had a couple top targets. I mean, that's reasonable. And Palpatine actually probably in blue is one of the harder matches probably for Boba Green. But what are you looking for against Green blue?
Well, you both want to have the ramp. Well, at least you want to have the ramp. They don't. So Bazine resupplies the dream hand. You rip their ramp and then play your own. You want to have, and the Bazine is great because it's also a shield against Power of the Dark Side. Crumb also fills that role. Or I guess Intimidator as well. So you have to play around power because you want to protect your Boba flip. That's key.
Yep, you should even be a little more passive than normal. Like if there's risk, maybe you don't want Boba to come out, immediately. And Vader is great protection. A little bit later, for me, they have a lot of unique units, so I'm real happy to Enticing Reward them. That typically ends up in a pretty good spot. And then the late game is like the other hard control shells. You're looking to Bazine the top, like the highest part of the top end, and then it's just a slugfest. It's you're playing, your biggies against theirs, and you hope that you've removed it so that Avenger isn't fully getting you.
Yeah, because Avenger and Snow both win the game for them. I think it's a matter of preventing it more than beating it.
Yep. I mean, definitely
Kill him before that if you can.
Yeah, if you can. Yep. And also know that Snoke is non-leader units, so if you can keep that Boba healthy, you're in a good spot.
Yep. Boss or hard control. There was a blue Vader that actually did well Baltimore before Fallout.
Nice.
It's just the traditional enemy of Boba Green. From some stuff that the Bazine didn't exist then.
I think Red Bosk is terrified of us because the armor is just so devastating. But the blue Bosk is positioned pretty well, and it's similar to the Kira, except they have even more hard control tools. So it's really a game of trying to Bazine the top end and hope that that it's not overwhelming. And our sideboards are exceptional typically. So much of choose sides and those types of cards, Palps returns, makes it so that you are greatly advantaged in those games. You should definitely be looking for opportunities that if the first game is going poorly, then you should just jettison it and get to that second game.
Yep. And both of you have control things here. I mean, you have a Devastator there. You have a choose sides. There's one Palp returns.
Yep, I will be bringing in the Recruit to help me find the Devastator, and the Palp return to help me replay the Devastator. Devastator will be one of those great answers to their top end.
Vader's very important in that matchup, I think, right?
That's true. Just to also get the Bazine to rip out that top end, as we were saying.
Yeah, and blue-red villain is all one-to-one removal except for Blast. So multiple targets are there, and things like Thor on Dark Side is basically worthless if you promote.
Yep.
Do you have any green Palp that you had to deal with?
Fortunately, no.
I think that in general we need to talk about how green Boba's friend is Sabine. So it's when Sabine, Boba's hanging out and Sabine just is the bodyguard that is keeping all that stuff in check. So we have a decent matchup into Sabine, but Sabine is just feasting on Palps, and we hope it continues.
Yep, and that's exactly right. I mean, a really good green Palp player has 9 ramp. A better top hand is going to steal one of your guys. So it's a really tough matchup now. I think it comes in large part down to armor, because that he can't fix easily.
Yeah, armor's great.
Yep.
Also, some sideboard tech, like Change of Heart or the choose sides can help you in that matchup.
Waylay.
Right, because you can Change of Heart whatever they steal and you get to keep it. Also Waylay.
Yeah, Waylay just bounces back.
Good enough.
Not there. Change of Heart, choose sides, you can get it
very,
back.
very valid.
All right.
Yeah, and like they are typically looking to use 2 to 3 cards to kill your Boba, and they're happy about it. so you need to it's another matchup where try to keep your Boba leader as spotless as possible because they're going to pour a bunch of cards into it.
All right. Though a Syndicate Lackey plus Barrage does get Boba. If they can ramp up with you. All right, so you guys have both done well. I mean, I think a lot of people watching this videos are going up their final planetary qualifiers and are looking to get ready for set 3, of which there'll be a couple of changes to the list. But I mean, so long as all these cards are still legal, I mean, I think Core still plays, right? What do you have advice for somebody prepping for an event they really want to do well at, a planetary qualifier, or a 1K or 2K, 5K, something where there's money on the line?
And there's no shame in playing the good cards and playing the good deck, and it's okay to be a villain and just play the busted cards. And also, you don't need to stay up late the night before making tons of changes. It's worth getting an extra half-hour sleep. So those are the 2 big things I would suggest.
And even if you're playing the best deck, you have to get the reps in still. Learn the lines against the various matchups, because if you're new to Boba Green, Sabine is still a scary matchup if you don't know how to play it.
There's a lot of matchups that you need to white knuckle generally that even if you're seeing this, I'm not sure that you should change at the last minute. If there's something that you're more familiar with, then you should probably, dance with who brought you.
All right. Well, this has been very good. I think actually the content is even better the second time around. So thank you guys for both the record and being willing to do this and the repeat. Why don't you take us home? What final words you have to the aspiring fetishists? Start with Krusher.
What they say, better be lucky than good, but you can't help being lucky. You have to try and be good. So you have to, I don't know. I mean, to some extent, the deck is so consistent and draws well. There's great cards, so you're in a great chance to be lucky because you're bringing the best deck that exists right now. But you have to play to your outs. If you see your opponent's about to, if you don't think you can stabilize, your opponent has reach and they kill you, maybe you just need to try and trigger that race and hope they don't have a certain card and you draw a certain card. You play the games to win. That's that. Don't get in your head if you're behind on a best of 3. You lose game 1, you've got 2 games ahead of you. You can still take that. Just stay calm. Reset between games. Don't tilt. That definitely throws your game off. Make sure you're fed throughout an event and watered.
and I would say never not have armor. You should just make sure that you have that armor. That's important. Also, generally, I think it's true for some folks that you should consider slowing your play down just a little bit. There's a large clock, and certainly you don't want to be slow playing, but there's a lot of decision points and a lot of lines and a lot of ways that you're going to need to use your resources 2 turns from now. You should take a beat. Think about it.
Especially in top 8, you have extra time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason there's extra time in top 8. Use it.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. This is the Boba Green Masterclass. Good luck on your final event. Sounds like you guys are both playing here. We'd like to see both succeed there, and we'll hit you back as we continue with this game. And if everybody watches, you're my hero. Later.
Thanks for including me. Yep. Take care.
Later. Cheers.